What kind of historical sources can be used to write history? Ming and Kay are walking upstairs. Kay sees a booth selling vintage postcards at the sidewalk and says,
Hey, Ming! Come and take a look at this funny postcard.
Right.
The people inside have pigtails and wear cheongsam. They look exactly like those Qing Dynasty people on TV shows.
Yes, these are vintage postcards. They are showing scenes of Hong Kong during the 19th century.
That was how Hong Kong looked like in the past. Kay, do you think we can use this postcard in our history project?
So, what kind of information are you looking for the project?
We want to look for some historical information about the streets and buildings in the Central and Western District.
Well, I do have something for your reference.
That's good.
Do you know what the meaning of history is?
History is things that have occurred in the past.
Do you think it's really that simple?
Camera pans to an indoor scene. Dr. Kwong Chi Man from the Baptist University says,
So what is history? History is a compilation of memories from the past. The past is what happened, whereas memories are glimpses of the past we held through various means. The purpose of writing history is not to educate us about the past. It is to allow us to sympathize with different historical experiences and to understand the historical contexts that shape the world we live in. When we learn history, we need to understand that the context of various situations are always different to one another. One risks distorting the past when one is trying to learn lessons, to offer moral instructions, or to arouse emotions by reducing history into simple stories.
The camera pans back to the postcard booth. Booth owner takes a diary from the booth and says,
So, the way you collect and compile your memories of the past would affect how you present history. Do you write diaries?
I do.
So, just use diary as an example then. Today, I would say two young men visited my store. They are very interested in my postcards and they are very patient and listen to all my history knowledge. But to you, you may write, I passed a store today and saw some interesting postcards, but the shopkeeper kept on talking and bored you to death. So, even though we have experienced the same events, our memories may differ. So the way history presented could be very different.
Camera pans back to Dr. Kwong and he says,
It is a common pitfall for people to assume that those who have experienced a historical event have a better understanding of it than others, and their views are unchallengeable facts. Memories are glimpses of the past that are held by individuals or shared by communities through various means. However, no one can remember everything in the past, and memories change over time. One may simply lose some of her memory when time lapses. Interpretation and understanding of the past may also change over time. For example, the participants from the two sides of the same war can give very different accounts. One may deliberately distort his recollections for their own benefits. After the Second World War, some German generals blamed Hitler for the war crimes when they were writing their memoirs. Therefore, the understanding of the difference between history, the past, and memory is crucial for anyone who is trying to study history.
The camera pans back to the postcard booth and Ming asks,
So writing history is just like piecing different information together to recreate the past in its entirety, similar to police reenacting the crime scenario.
Well, writing history is not simply piecing different information together in order to recreate the past.
Why is that?
Camera pans back to Dr. Kwong and he says,
Writing history is not an attempt to recreate the past in its entirety. Complete recreation of the past is impossible because the record is incomplete. For example, while historical trade figures of colonial Hong Kong are abundant, sources about the thoughts and feelings of the manual working class in Hong Kong during the 19th century is a lot more difficult to come by because of the lack of documentation. Moreover, since not all the pieces of the past are of equal importance, historians have to judge whether a particular piece should be included in his study. Thus, the writing of history is, after all, an attempt to create an interpretive account of selected parts of the past.
The camera pans back to the postcard booth and the booth owner says,
History is written by people. The stance and viewpoints of the authors can be very different. So historical texts should not be seen as absolute truths that cannot be revised and challenged.
History is written by modern people. Then what are the references to writing history?
The writing history is very different from writing novels. You can't write whatever you want and call it a history. You need lots of primary sources to do that.
Camera pans back to Dr. Kwong and he says,
Before writing history, historians collect pieces from the past and examine them critically in order to offer readers opportunities to understand different historical experiences that is originally not available to them. Historical data can be collected from surviving pieces of the past. The ability to write and revisit history with the use of different primary sources is an integral part of the training of a historian.
The camera pans back to the postcard booth and Ming says,
So what are primary sources?
There are various kinds of primary sources, such as archival materials in the form of private and public correspondences, contemporary publications, oral history records, or even graphical materials such as photos or paintings, or even historical structures or their remains.
Wow. So is it very difficult if we want to collect primary information to write history like the Second World War?
That's right.
camera pans back to Dr. Kwong and he says,
Historians consult a large number of historical sources when they write history. It is very important for historians to learn to use all kinds of information to write or revisit history. Sometimes, historians rely on works of their peers when they are trying to write surveys of a long period or covering a broad topic. We call these secondary sources. To make original contributions on a specific topic, however, historians have to turn to primary sources.
The camera pans back to the postcard booth and Ming says,
Okay, why don't we connect more primary sources for our project?
Good. We can have more primary sources and our own contributions to a project, then it would be more reliable.
That's not always true. Primary sources are not always reliable.
camera pans back to Dr. Kwong and he says,
Primary sources are created by people from the past who had various motives and operated in very different historical environments. Therefore, we should not accept primary sources at face value. For example, a government official might want to hide something or feeling when he was writing a report. So primary sources have to be critically assessed, and one has to keep in mind that some of the primary sources are biased in one way or another. The best way of countering this problem is to collect a variety of sources from different perspectives and to cross-check them critically.
The camera pans back to the postcard booth and Ming says,
Should we look for primary information then?
It doesn't mean that you can just throw away the primary sources. They let us know how people think in the past, and they also allow us to study history from new perspectives. For example, a trial record of the 19th century reveals not just the case in question, but also different aspects of the society, such as its culture, social norm, or economic development. And history can always be rewritten with the use of new sources or from new perspectives.
Then let's work harder and get more primary information for our project.
Yeah, I do have some primary sources here. Why not take a look?
Sure.
This video is produced by Personal, Social and Humanities section of the Education Bureau, the Government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region in 2016. Special thanks to Dr. Kwong Chi Man from the History Department of the Baptist University of Hong Kong.